Okay, so let's talk about taking the TTC or the subway as someone who is deaf and hard of hearing. For the first time yesterday since moving to a different location, or since my boyfriend moved to a different location, I used the TTC in Toronto by myself. Before, my boyfriend was living in downtown Toronto, and it took a while for me to use the subway there because I was afraid of taking it by myself. And then he moved outside of downtown Toronto, and it took me a while to get the courage to do it all over again. I mean, let's be honest, the TTC isn't the most deaf accessible always. I'm assuming that's probably similar to other subway stations, so maybe you can use these 4 tips and tricks that I have for using the subway station when you are deaf or hard of hearing. Or if you're not deaf or hard of hearing and you just want to know what I did, then, you know, hello, join me. So I actually went all the way from Kipling Station to Queen Station by myself and then back, and that was a little nerve-wracking. So the very first thing that I did was I went on Google Maps about 20 times, and then before I left, I made sure to screenshot everything on my phone. Because when you go underground, there's no more service, and Wi-Fi doesn't really work. At least for me yesterday, the Wi-Fi didn't really work, so I needed to make sure that I had all the information there to make sure that I was very, very comfortable and I wasn't going to get lost. Because I know I can't rely on TTC workers and all of them to type for me, because that's a risk that it's a waste of time sometimes. So I screenshotted the station that I was leaving from, and I also had to walk there myself, so that was something that I had to do a lot of research on, because Google Maps made me get lost the whole entire time and took me in one big circle, and actually took me past the station. But anyway, so I screenshotted this station I was leaving from, the station that was my destination station, which actually I took one extra stop to Queen. Originally I was supposed to stop at Dundas as my destination. I just took that extra stop because I know that station. And then I definitely screenshotted the station that would make me switch subways. So not only that, but I put up all the stops in between, like Kipling and Yonge, and just made sure that I could keep track of all the stop. So that way I would make sure I would not get off at the wrong stop. Now on every subway that I've been on, there's a little map that shows you all 3 lines. So the eastbound, westbound, north and south. Okay, so there was a line from Kipling to Kennedy, and then 2 other lines that I can't remember right now. Now on the newer subways, they had actual lights on each stop, so when you passed one, it would turn orange or something, and then when the next stop was coming, that light on that would flash, so you would have an idea of where you were going. Now the older ones, they didn't have lights attached to each stop, so you kind of just had to, it is what it is. I could sort of hear some of the stops in the announcement, but a lot of them I didn't really understand, so it's kind of really hard to follow along with without the light. When I changed subways at Yonge Station, that was easy because that was I changed to a newer subway, but the one from Kipling to Yonge, it was an older one. So another thing that I really like on the newer subways is that there's a big old text screen that will say next stop Queen or next stop Union, or you know, whatever, and then it'll tell you which side to get off of, which I don't really need that. I can see the doors open myself. But it's nice to know what the next stop is in plain text. That is probably the most accessible way for me to know where we're going and what the next stop is, and it makes me feel a little more comfortable. However, when I'm on an older subway, like from Kipling to Yonge, and you know, Yonge and back, or Bloor and back, there's no screen. So what I actually end up doing, and this is my last tip, is I try to sit by a window somewhere that is accessible, that I can, you know, look at the walls of the subway stops and, you know, see where we are. So for example, when I look on my Google Maps screenshot and then I see the stop before Kipling, I can just look out the window, and when I see that name on the wall, I know, okay, I'm gonna get off at this next stop. Of course, I could also continue to look out the window, and when I see my stop, then I leave, but just for a little extra comfort, because I like that extra comfort, I just like to know ahead of time where we're going. I know the TTC is extremely easy for some people, but coming from somebody who is not used to public transportation, it can be a little bit scary, especially when, you know, there's going to be announcements made that I cannot hear, auditory announcements that I cannot hear, and there were announcements, and I was just like, I have no idea what's being said. So it's a little frightening, but those little tips and tricks and constantly checking things make me feel a little bit better. A couple of other deaf friends have told me that they find it a little hard to navigate to TTC as well, so I know I'm not alone. But if you have any other tips, it doesn't matter if you're deaf or hard of hearing or even hearing, because I know some people will get confused by this public transportation anyway. So if you do have any other tips in general, please feel free to leave them down in the comments. I'm excited to go on my next adventure by myself to Koreatown, which is a shorter journey than going all the way to Eaton Center. So if I can go all the way from here to Eaton Center, I think I will be fine going from here to Christie Station. But I'm excited. If you want to follow me on all my social media, links to that will be down below. If you want to help support my content, you can do so by being a monthly patron on Patreon or leave tips on Coffee. Both links will be down below. I upload every Monday, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and I will see you later. Bye!